Projection. For nearly 2 decades, theatre maker Chuck Mike has been trying to get Antonio Kemi Coca to tell her personal story theatrically. In 2009, there was a catalyst. Antonia met Tondarai Munevu. These are their stories as told to Chuck Mike.
It was a mistake. Not the random kind that's easily overlooked. Well, at least not by me. You see, it was a chance encounter, an audition. I was a cast member helping to audition people. She was cute.
Like a rose near full bloom or a peacock crossing the road, but without the facial hair and with far more weight.
We chatted about the play.
That
brave African theatre company who dared, before slaves were set free, to act a play of Shakespeare, and jailed they were, only to rebel once more by telling stories about themselves instead. Her smile was beguiling. There was an attractive reservation about her. She told me about her day job, waiting tables, and a play she was in at the moment.
2 jets.
She went her way, and I mine. That night, intrigued, I thought, she was different. I made inquiries.
About the girl.
The cute girl with the beguiling smile.
Attractively reserved. He's not a she. He's a he.
It was a mistake. Not the random kind that's easily overlooked. Well, at least not by me. And I tried to apologize, but it glanced the ear and bypassed the heart. And it was so important to me, because I've had a lifetime of people thinking I am who I'm not. It was a big mistake by me, and I needed to be forgiven, to be okay with me.
It was a chance encounter at an audition. I had gone to try out. She looked radiantly rugged.
Definitely the peacock type.
And we did chat about the play.
Those marvelous African players who performed Shakespeare and with their backs against the prison wall found freedom by telling stories about themselves instead.
She was strong and much older than me.
43.
And I, a mere 26. She was confident, knew how to take her space in the room.
Manly.
But gentle and wise. And we did talk about my day job.
Waiter.
Metro D. And the play that I was in at the moment, 2 jets. That should have been a clue.
It did set me thinking.
But I kind of knew that she was a she, thinking I was a she. And her apology, well, I'd had the likes many times before. It glanced the ear and bypassed the heart. I guess really being sorry means never having to say it.
And maybe real forgiveness comes from a special place where people breathe
and tell stories about themselves. There's a phrase in Zimbabwe, Pane Nyaya. There's a story. And that's what my grandmother used to call me. Pane Nyaya. My story starts in Harare, Zimbabwe. My earliest memory was getting ready for mom. My mom was this glamorous figure, this vibrant, exciting woman who was very well to do and wanted to do the best for her family.
My mum wanted to do the best for her family too, but I don't think she quite pulled it off.
And so that transferred to how she dressed and looked. The things I remember the most about her are her perfume, red lipstick, white clothes. She had this fur jacket that she used to wear to work in the morning.
My mum was a really hard worker. She liked clothes as well.
And I'd send her with the maid, and throughout the day, the maid...
Maid?
Yes, throughout the day, the maid would say, "Stop doing that! And when your mom comes, I'll tell her. And when your mom comes, she'll know about this." We had a lovely dog called Lido.
I had a dog called Sheba. It was a mongrel.
And he too also loved my mom. He was cream and fluffy and very beloved of the family. And we all had this sense in her absence of her return being very overpowering, very much the center of the day, the center of our existence. To this day, if I hear certain things, or I smell certain things, like poison, she wears poison. The Christian Dior perfume called Poison. Even that suggests this sense of danger and attainment of glamour, because I think that Dynasty was on TV at the time, so there was this whole Diane Carroll, Alexis Carrington sort of dressing, because she could have things made for her. She also loved to entertain, and so the home in itself was an extension of her character. So to this day, when I smell poison, the first thought that comes to my mind is my mother.
I have no memory of smell of my mum.
The first is an emotional reaction of delight, slightly mixed with this sense of apprehension. Am I in the right place? Am I dressed the right way? What will she say? What will she think? That is for me, still connected to that smell. And then there's the intense color red, her lipstick. A couple Christmases ago, we got her 4 shades of Chanel red lipstick, and that really took us back to the time when we were growing up as children. My brother and my sister, we didn't like the maid, you know. She represented my mother's authority, but was not my mother herself. She was from the rural areas, and so she didn't understand anything. But she could follow the rules, just to
Get the kids ready.
So sometimes you get punished by the maid for
Trying to get her fired. Trying to ruin her life.
But the main thing, the absolute main thing, was that at about 4 o'clock, you needed to start getting ready for mom. So forget what you're wearing before. You'd need to discard that and find another pair of trousers and a shirt. And she used to buff me. She had this stone that she used to rub all over me, particularly my feet, just to get the dirt off. And I remember she used to put this soap in my hair. And I remember she would rub it over and my eyes would start stinging from the soap running over. And she's in a hurry because she's got 1,000 other things to do. And then I'll start crying and then she'll slap me.
Be quiet, get ready.
A rinse, a pat down with a towel, Vaseline, moisturized to glow. I'll be putting this clothes, which should last me from 4 o'clock until about 7 when my mom came. You could normally hear the dog barking, because I guess he has a sense of smell and he could smell her from afar. So I would follow the dog, and the dog would just bark and bark and bark and bark and bark and get very excited, but never touching my back, because she always used to wear white. I remember being very excited. She was always happy to see me, but I remember not having any immediate contact with her, just standing there, waiting. And then she would just come in. Two hours later, I was in bed, and all of her friends were arriving. I could hear glasses clinking. I tried to put myself to sleep, but I just kept hearing those glasses clinking. Finally, I would open the door, see them, look at them, what they were doing. Then someone might be going to the bathroom, then I would panic and rush back into bed.
But in your dad's house,
That's how I fell asleep most nights at my mom's house.
it was a completely different story, wasn't it?
Hearing the sounds of people.
When you got to your dad's house,
Most of my friends called me Choza.
Choza.
Yes, it means a boy who's really a girl.
Really?
Well, yeah, it was an affectionate nickname, a celebration of me, somehow a name that fit.
Choza.
Dini Choza.
Choza.
Chozawa Choza.
Choza.
Dini Choza.
Choza.
My brother and sister still call me by that name.
Choza.
But when I got to my dad's house, it was a completely different story. Nothing was in its right place. My dad used to drink a lot.
My dad too.
My dad used to drink a lot. And whenever we stayed with him, we never saw him. And whenever we did see him, he always used to threaten to cancel it. Whatever it was one wanted to do.
I will cancel it. Those who cancel it, I will cancel everything.
But this was the time after independence in Zimbabwe, and everyone was feeling the good times that were coming.
Not the same for us. It was cold in England and they were racist.
My dad had immigrated from rural Rusape as an accountant to Harare, and he was the best dressed man in the world.
My dad was quite a snazzy dresser as well.
My dad was the first person I ever saw with those things. What are they called? They hold you shut down?
Arm bracelets.
Arm bracelets. And they were made out of some sort of gold, and they were elastic, and they had a sort of silver material. And he used to wear pink shirts way before anyone wore pink shirts and contrasting ties.
Nothing too flashy then.
No, it was all very understated. Very English. I think somehow he had noticed some white people on the road and how they dressed. And I think he got his dressing from them.
So as a rural boy, he learned the way.
And he was also the life and soul of the party.
Same as mine.
That's why we never saw him. Everyone wanted to know, where's your father? We are having a party on Saturday. Where is he? And because he was never at home, whenever we stayed with him, we had to do things for ourselves.
My dad was at home most of the time.
So when my brother and sister were out, because they were teenagers at this stage, I would have to look after myself sometimes.
Me too.
So when I was 8, I remember I had to make my own food, and I got it all horribly wrong. I remember trying to make porridge, and this hot liquid poured all over me. And when you wipe something like that off, some of your skin actually comes off. And I remember this. I remember this as if it was yesterday, of feeling the pain but not being able to express it. I remember screaming and shouting and running outside trying to find some help from someone, some sympathy. When he did come home, he was always very drunk. He used to leave his money on the side table. I remember my brother and I used to sneak in late at night because we knew he was so drunk and so fast asleep we could take some of his money.
I took money from my dad too.
Those were the good days. I think I learned everything I know about dressing, about looking good from him. That's one thing my mom always gave him credit for.
At least he knows how to dress.
Back at my mother's house, I noticed that things were different. Her friends were still coming along, and I still had to get dressed up and made to look pretty and English. But the space just got smaller and smaller. My bedroom, I started sharing it with my brother. Him and I would be in bunk beds, and my sister would have a sleeping bag in the same room. My mother started bringing lodgers into the house.
My dad had lodgers as well.
I think things just got difficult for her. It was the beginning for many of the mass exodus from Zimbabwe to England, and she decided to move to England to get a better job to look after all of us. We had to go and live with my dad full time. Things changed. My dad was still the life and soul of the party, the bee's knees.
Same as mine.
But he wasn't always coming home. And so when my sister also left, I realized something had to change. I headed to Mount St. Joseph Missionary Boarding School. And that was the beginning of a whole new life for me. The first intense memory I have is of my high school history teacher, Mr. Wangwe. I remember being in class, and he asked a question, just a normal question. And I really didn't know the answer, but I sort of thought I knew the answer at the back of my mind. So I put my hand up.
Tondera.
I think that it is.
That's good.
He applauded me, not for the answer itself, but for the bravery of offering something. Something I wasn't so sure about. That made my day. I think it's the nicest thing that anyone's ever said to me, to be commended for the bravery of offering something. He was also very good looking. Tall, black, gorgeous straight man. Devastating. I think it was the beginning of me feeling that I had a way with men that wasn't just masculine. Pane nyaya. It wasn't sexual at the time, it was just that he was so impressive. Like no one else had ever seen. Just great. Just a very different person.
I was also a post-independence baby. Nigeria cut the British loose in 1960, and within a decade, my parents had come over to England. They left my older sister, Tola, behind. I was born here. My earliest memory would be when I was about 4. I'm living in a place called Plaistow in East London. And back then, I was brought up mostly by a nanny, because my parents were either at work or studying.
A nanny? Did she by any chance bath you?
And within that environment, late 60s, early 70s, Plaistow was an all-white, working-class neighbourhood. Their kids weren't treated very well. I mean, people would call you names.
Walk, black bastard! Go back to your own country!
Kind of confusing to me, because it was my country. I remember going to the sweet shop down the road, and the woman named Vera who owned it would say,
Must be very cold for you in terms of where you come from.
and I'm thinking, but I just come from down the road. Our house was close to a West Ham football stadium, and after a game, whether they won or lost, you shouldn't be there. They were looking for a fight with a visiting team, but any blacks who happened to be on the street would do. That's funny, because I think they were one of the first to hire a black footballer, Clyde Best. Our house had a garden that was full of weeds, overgrown and underkept. I used to bury my dollies there when they broke. My daddy owned the house, and we had lodgers. And we used to go to parties all the time, visiting other Nigerians. Birthdays, weddings, christenings. Us kids had a great time, running in and out of rooms, dancing, laughing, eating chinchin, drinking Pepsi. Mukuru-muke, majo, follow-me, otomilaru, kinya, follow-me, mukuru-muke, majo, follow-me. Apart from his studies, my dad worked in a car lot. He was exceptionally charming, a good dresser, funny, proud. He made people laugh. He was really bright. He was a cherubim and seraphim church member. Do you know those people that wear all white? My sister would later tell me that
He was a church goer, not a Christian.
he loved to drink long life lager and he smoked consulate cigarettes. I can still remember the smell of the menthol. And he could sing. He called himself
The man with a golden voice. Here in Nazola, Oribe, Wadeleo. Here in Nazola, Oribe, Wadele.
He was really funny. I really loved him. I must have been a bit of a mischief maker, because the words I remember him saying to me most often were,
Kemi, take advice.
I never really did.
And what about your mother?
She was a devout Catholic. She named me after a black saint.
And?
She was studying too. She worked in a factory.
Yes.
Okay, so she bought me mints. She worked in a tree-ball mint factory. The fact is, I really loved my dad. I didn't like what he did to my mum, but I loved him, and her too. The relationship between them was really, really violent, and sometimes my mum was in hospital. I remember one time, he beat her up so bad, she managed to run out the house, but then she came back to bath me, and I remember begging her.
Please, please.
Mummy did leave for Nigeria when I was 4. The story I've been told is that I was supposed to go with her, but my dad didn't want me to go, so he pretended he had a ticket for me. I remember being in my best dress, Anyway, the ticket was never bought, and she went off. And he said to her,
you don't worry. I will send it tomorrow.
and the next day came. And he never sent me. I was missing my mum. I mean, he did have other girlfriends, but I never felt any of them could take her place. I wanted to go to Nigeria to see her and a sister I'd never met. Nigeria held some mystery to me. And now it held my mum. It was a bit difficult being brought up by a man. And that was odd in the 70s, you know, a man bringing up a girl. My daddy bought me a yellow nylon night dress. And he made me go to school in it. I tried to explain to him it was a night dress.
Kemi, night day is a dress, take advice.
So I had to go to school in it. The kids laughed and I was teased the whole day. My dad used to keep money under a lamp, just spare change. So when he'd go out, I'd go and take some to buy sweets for people, just to make friends. I got caught. Ah! That was trouble. I remember smoking tea bags in his pipe and making concoctions. My dad used to lock me in the house, but I had my TV and my food, so I was kind of all right. But because I couldn't play out, sometimes, when he was at work, I'd climb out the window and go and play out with my mates. I'd have one kid at the top of the street to see if my dad was coming, and they'd be like, Kemi. My Nigerian name is Kemi, but they pronounced it Kame.
Kami, your dad's coming.
I replaced it with my Catholic name, Antonio. One time my dad called me, just as I jumped back through the window into the front room. I got a beating that day. When I was 8 years old, a woman I now call Auntie Jane worked as a dinner lady in my school. When it rained, we would all run to the tin roof shelter and she would hold my hand. And one day she said,
Tone, ask your dad if you can come visit me on Saturday afternoons.
because she didn't live far away, my daddy said yes. I told lies at school. I just tried to make life as regular as the white people's lives were. You know, like, I'd say I was going on holiday to Spain. I wasn't going anywhere. Or sometimes I would say I was having sausage and mash with salad for dinner. And I was having eba with egusi soup. Well, all the lies I told about having English food became true, because these were the things I ate at Auntie Jane's house. She'd buy me sweets and clothes, and sometimes she'd take me to visit her blind mother in hospital. I remember kissing Nanny Rose hello and thinking, you're never going to know I'm black. You never mentioned my colour. Auntie Jane would take me to church on a Sunday, and if we were late, she would say,
Tone, put your best foot forward.
People often asked her if she'd adopted me, and she'd say,
No, she's just a little girl that I know.
now sometimes I would ask for big presents, like a bike, and she'd carefully explain to me,
Now, Tone, you know I love you very much, but I'm not actually your mom. And big things like bicycles is what parents get for their children.
Auntie Jane was a saviour. Even when horrible things happened, I always had Saturday to look forward to, or a holiday she'd be taking me on. One day, I asked her, why are you so good to me? We never said any more about it. I wasn't being particularly good at school. One time during a swimming lesson, us kids didn't want to get in the pool because it was cold. It's cold. It's cold. No, it really was really cold.
Antonia, of course it's not cold.
I spluttered and struggled and barely made it to the poolside. And when I got out,
Oh, this letter says that you have been a teacher.
in Nigeria, people believe you're lucky to be educated in England.
This girl. You know, Sister Tola is imitating herself And here you are messing about in English. I said, is it true that you're a better teacher?
Yes, Daddy, but she pushed me. Ah!
Get out, you useless girl!
I never really got over that. That's when I stopped caring about formal education. Because of all the antics I got up to, being left home alone, my dad decided to put me with a childminder to keep me safe. The family were from Antigua. They had 2 boys, and a girl. I loved running up and down the house. I wanted to play with my big sister, but she lived in Nigeria, so I left the games we played.
Hide and seek.
All right.
Hide and seek.
My mother was a really nice woman. One, she'd go to work and leave us with her husband. 2, I don't remember much about him, just that he was quiet. 3, there were times when this man would watch us play. 4, then he would call me into a room. We would all stop running. 5, I walked slowly towards him. 6,
And as the boys looked on, he closed the door.
7, he held me gently by the shoulders
And pushed me down onto the couch.
8,
His face
was rough.
and prickly.
9, and I tasted cigarettes. 10, I wanted my dad to come and take me home, but I couldn't tell him because he'd have killed him and gone to jail.
11.
And there'd be no one to look after me. I mean, I think the mother knew, but she didn't say anything, and I knew it was wrong.
12.
I couldn't say anything. It didn't happen every day, but I knew it could happen any time.
13. Ready or not, I'm coming!
Dad travelled to Nigeria when I was 10. He left me with a friend
You're
of mine.
right.
I'm all right. Dad travelled to Nigeria when
I'm fine.
My dad travelled to Nigeria when I was 10. He left me with a friend of my mum's. She had 6 kids of her own, so I was always at the bottom. We had second-hand clothes, and sometimes we couldn't go on school trips. When Mum and Dad did get back, my mum got custody of me, but that didn't work. She wanted me to sew and knit and stuff like that. She didn't want me to play football. She just wanted me to stay home and cook and clean and sweep. Whereas with my dad,
We sweep when we want to sweep. We eat when we want to eat. We watch football together.
I was used to playing out on the street. I pissed standing up because that's what I saw my dad do.
That's my girl.
And I never washed my hands after I went to the toilet. All of this made her furious. She got quite violent towards me. That's when I began running away. My dad did get custody of me again, but it wasn't working out with him either. Our relationship was never the same. Every time I made mention of my mum, he kept on yelling and shouting.
That woman!
This and
That woman!
that. He would never call her your mum. He always said,
That woman!
I think he must have thought she was rubbing off on me. I began running away from him too. I even slept in a car for a while. Although it didn't feel like normal life, I really liked being in a children's home. They gave me a lot of money, a lot of food, and they weren't allowed to hit me. There were 13 kids between the ages of 11 to 18. 7 of us were black. We enjoyed listening to soul music, cracking jokes, and taking every opportunity to wind each other and the staff up. Yes, we played rounds in the garden, pool in the kitchen, and argued over every shot on ball hit.
It was loud, shouting with no more talk.
Nobody wanted to be out.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be out.
And if you were losing at pool.
Oh my God!
What?
Oh my God! I saw that!
So what?
I saw that! Oh my God! Do you want that? 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 Do you want that?
They used to take us on holiday once a year to Great Yarmouth or Southend. we'd have to go in a big yellow bus with Newark Local Authority written on the side. Shame! We all ducked our heads until the bus pulled out of London. There were 2 black women amongst the staff. I'm still in touch with them today. But before then, stuff was changing all the time. I never told many people at school that I was in care, because most people think kids in care are bad. Well, all the kids in my home were there because their families had broken down. If you did do something wrong, it got written in an incident book, and you could lose privileges. I tried to stay good, because I didn't want to miss youth theatre after school.
She wants to be a movie star. Go to Hollywood.
I loved the cleaners. They were always singing. I'd learnt all these songs from a school play, a World War II school play, and we would sing them together. We're going to hang out the washing on the Seafried line. Have you any dirty washing, mother dear? We're going to hang out the washing on the Seafried line, 'cause the washing day is here.
Oh, Tone, you know that one, eh? You were born in the wrong year.
There were 3 pretty popular black girls in there, and I was one of them. We called ourselves the Sambo Sisters. Da, 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 da. Woo! We used to sneak out to parties. After nights out, we'd get dressed up and stuff our bed with clothes and pillows, and then, what are you doing? Up to the local club, dance to soul music, and party with the big men then. On the way back, we'd be freezing waiting for the night bus. And one day we got back, and we knew we'd been busted because our bed was scattered with clothes. Then there was Uncle Jim. I loved him. He was a care worker. Called me
Foghorn mouth.
because I was loud.
Antonia, you're just a stroppy adolescent.
He was this skinny white man who used to wear flares. But he didn't care. He was really strict. If you were 2 minutes late, he'd make your life a misery. He'd come to the club and embarrass you. You'd be there, getting down with the latest moves, right? And this white man comes in, takes the mic and starts shouting out everybody's names.
Julia Reed, Victoria Suskin, Antonia Coker. Surprise, surprise. From 37 Marsden Road, Children's Home. You were supposed to be back at 9. It is now 9:05. Shame.
I remember fretting once because I had a history exam but I hadn't revised. And when I told him, he said,
You're an actor, make it up.
and I passed. There was this place called the Quiet Room. You could go in there and be all by yourself and listen to music. The opportunity to be alone and just sit was a real privilege, but you had to earn it. I got to go in there quite a few times.
Really?
Well, maybe a couple of times.
Really?
Okay, once. I used to visit my dad at weekends, but I didn't hear much from my mum. One night, a social worker came to my room. It was after 10.
Antonia, how are you getting along? You know, if I'm here this late, it's for a big reason. Antonia, your mom's dead.
I think I said, I don't care, and I asked her to go to bed. I didn't go to the funeral.
That's sad.
I saw my dad. I told him when we were casually walking on the street that that woman had died. And he broke into tears. I was so surprised. I thought he didn't like her.
The boarding school was on a mountain west of Harare. I ended up in the worst dormitory you could find. Some people had a space with 4 people, 8 people, 12 people. I ended up in a dormitory with 18 people.
I know what that's like.
And I was a bedwetter.
Yeah, me too.
It was a Catholic missionary boarding school, and so I slowly became very religious, and yet sensually awakened at the same time. For our school uniform, I used to wear a blue shirt, blue and white striped tie, grey shorts, long grey stockings, and black shoes. In the winter, we would add blue woolen sweaters, long grey trousers, and for me, a very long custom-made scarf. I also added a thick layer of sole to my black shoe to give me that little extra height. Actually, it was an extra strut. Everyone used to love me. They used to talk about Ngochani. I never heard it mentioned. I didn't know what it meant. I'd never even considered it. But I remember when I was growing up, my grandmother saying,
Paninyaya, you're not going to be doing any of that.
but she never told me what that was. At school, every Saturday night there was a disco. Hormones raging, the generator overworked, would shut down, the lights would switch off. Now the rule said you needed to go to your dormitories and sleep. So the first time it happened, I actually took it all seriously. Oh, the lights have gone off, I'll go to bed and sleep. So I remember going to my dormitory, getting to my bed, and I slept. And then 5 minutes later, I felt this movement at the bottom of my bed. And then sort of a hand coming through. And then sort of like a person coming through. And I thought, that's strange, there's a person in my bed. And I remember I could smell this person, but I had never been that close to someone to actually smell them. I remember thinking, oh, that's how people smell when they're close to you. That's a different scent. And I didn't know who this person was, I had no idea. So at first, he just sort of lay next to me, and I just tried to respond, but I didn't know what was happening. I remember there was no kissing. I remember my body being moved, and I just tried to move with whatever was happening. And then 2 minutes later, wetness, and that was it. His kiss left just as inconspicuously as they had come. It was like a memory, a distant but real memory. Subsequently, I thought, who was this person? And why me? What signal did I send off? And then I got used to it. I got used to it. On other occasions, I crept into other people's beds with my heart in my mouth, because you do not want to creep into some macho man's bed.
How did you know?
I don't know how. I knew. I just knew. The moment I got into this bed, this hand, this amiable hand would just help me along. I quickly knew I was in the right place. I used to read letters out loud from my mom so people could tell that they were from England.
Dear Tunde, I hope you are doing well and reading hard. Thank you for the pictures you sent. You look so smart in your uniform. You seem a bit taller. Either you have grown a bit, or you have added soles to your shoes.
Soles to his shoes.
I hope you like the scarf I sent. You must take care of it. I got it from Harrods, one of the most exclusive shops here, so don't lose it. London is frightfully cold. We thank God for the underground, which gives some respite when going to work. If only it would not be so packed. There's nothing like being so close to someone that you can physically smell them. Imagine.
Nevertheless, we thank God for his small mercies. I am prospering here, and the snow has covered all the ground. giving light to this place that is so often full of night. I hope that the money that I sent you through your dad was enough. I know you would have quickly gone and bought some roast chicken and salsa from that woman you've raved about so much for all of your friends. I am working hard to bring you, your brother, here for Christmas so we can all be together again. Oh, love, mommy, right soon and be well. Remember to use your scrubbing stone, particularly on your feet. Don't forget to moisturize. You're in the mountains and it gets dry. There was this priest, his name was Father Makoni. He was a bit reckless. There was always rumors about him being a bit of a boozer. He used to have this Land Rover that he used to drive in the afternoon and leave dust in his wake. There were always stories about him. When he led mass, it was always very interesting. Here's the priest you see being a normal person during the day. And then he would suddenly enter in this shaft of light, in long, majestic robes. And after the fourth former had done the reading of the day, it would be time for Father Makoni's daily homily. He would start by clearing his throat. A sound that somehow in our minds resonated with the sound of the generator at last night's disco. Then you would go.
I keep seeing things.
All of us would be like, I hope it wasn't me. I hope it wasn't me. Because there was this wondering about who he had seen at the podium.
I keep seeing things.
I hope it wasn't me. I hope it wasn't me. Because with all the sex that was going on, if you were caught in the middle of the night trying to get to the other dormitory, it was often by this priest because he kept late hours.
I hope you know that every action has consequences. And some of those consequences you don't want to know.
Our hearts were within a moment of stopping because there's a real threat that he would say it's you that he saw last night. But then, because he was drunk, he just would go off on a tangent. We believe that this priest was drinking that altar wine because, you know, they do this thing of he's had a bit of a... See, the other priests would have a taste, the nuns would have a taste. He used to have an appreciable gulp. And because he was drunk, when it was time for him to leave, he always used to do a 12 at the bottom of the altar. It was always about the arms. We also noticed that he was playing with something underneath his robes. Presumably his rosary. He would walk to the back vestibule, change into a pair of jean shorts and trainers and into his 4x4, vroom, the dust hitting the road. I always wanted to be like that. A priest, I mean. So I also got to be class monitor. And so rather than stop people from talking, I used to incite them. So two things would happen when the teacher came. So the teacher would say, okay, you as a class monitor have failed, and I'm punishing you, and I'll get a slap. As the ringleader, I liked it. It made me look good in front of the guys. The guys really liked it. So the teacher would say, you as a class monitor have failed, or we as a collective will get punished, which some of the studious people in the group really didn't like. And they'll be like,
I'm sorry, but Tonderai was talking.
So since I was always the class monitor in the noisy times, everyone just ended up talking because they figured,
If I don't talk, the teacher comes, I get slapped anyway.
so we would all lie down and the teacher would smack each person. And there was this moment of anticipation of the moment it was your turn.
There was a rumor that went round that If you were the first one there, then you'd really have an easy time of it because the teacher would just be warming up to his strikes.
So the first person would get a smack, and then the second person would get a smack. By the time the teacher got to the fourth and fifth person, he was just like, and you kind of were like, what do I do to prepare myself? What do I do? Because it's coming to you no matter what. It's coming to you. Sometimes the teacher would stop and scratch his hand. And then you'll be like, the women teachers were particularly good at this because they just use their 4 fingers and they'll be like, oh. So if you were at the end of the line, you got a lighter take. But if you were the class monitor, you definitely got 2 smacks for that. Ah! Oh!
There's a car. There's a car.
So the headmaster
There's a woman inside.
pulls me in.
So,
And I'm walking towards this blue Mazda 323. I'll never forget it. My dad, my grandmother, my uncle, and then my mom just comes out of the car. I must have wept for about 45 minutes. It's a strange moment, you know. I don't recognize you, but I know it's you. You see, England had become a dreamland to me. I'd imagined what it was like. The snow, the tube, the reluctant sun. We took a little drive to the shops to have our pictures taken. My mom told my dad that he would bring us to England for a holiday. That was the idea. Mom was very nice to my dad, went to his house, met his wife, which was very unusual. But when it was time for us to go to England, his air ticket just didn't come.
that old chestnut. Where have I heard that before?
And there was always a threat that he would cancel everything.
I will cancel it. Those who cancel that.
But he never cancelled anything. Sometimes I wish he had.
At 17, I progressed to hostel life, where you're on your own, but the staff come and check on you. You got a certain amount of money each week, and you had to budget, but they didn't teach you how. I remember this one guy bought 15 loaves of bread, because that's what he used to see being delivered to his children's home. Money was given on a Friday to last you the week. Well, I'd be knocking on the door by Wednesday for a sub, and sometimes I'd nip back to the children's home next door for a meal or pick a bite to take back to my room. In the hostel, I had this key worker called Joseph. He'd previously attended the same college as me. His job was to support me in any difficulties I had. We got quite close, though we fell out a few times, mostly when I didn't want to listen to his useful tips.
Kemi, take advice.
My mate had mentioned to me that he was gay. Joseph, people are saying you're gay. He didn't say anything. Every now and then I'd say it again, but I got no response, so I just assumed he wasn't. And then one day he said,
I'm having a birthday party.
I said I was going to come, and he said,
You can't.
so I persisted, and then he said,
I've asked the head of home and she said no.
I've got your address, Joseph, I'm going to be there anyway,
Why?
because I want to come.
You mean you're going to come despite the authority of the head of home?
Yes.
Knowing that it will get you into trouble?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I want to come, Joseph, come on.
Look, there are going to be a lot of gay people there.
So?
I'm going to be one of them.
That was my first up-close encounter with knowing someone was gay. I was fine with it. I got to go to the party, and that's all I cared about. By the time I graduated to bedsit life at 18, I was completely on my own.
No children's home next door to sneak back to for a meal?
No hostel mate to borrow a quick fiver from.
No one to check up on you?
It was a cold room. There were no curtains, just a bare bay window. Boxes with my stuffing were all around me. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. So I went to the off license to get some beers. used to drink, you know. I didn't like the taste. But that night, I bought 4 lagers. I cracked one, then another, then another, and then another.
So you started drinking?
Just to help me sleep. I was lonely, I guess.
Really? Did the drinking continue?
My first job was working in a children's theatre company. That's where I met Tracy, the company manager. She was tall and smart and funny, but I couldn't understand why I always wanted to be around her. I found out that she was gay. And I thought, well, that's all right, that's no problem. I like gay people, Joseph, no problem. Then I realised that there was something, look, not just that she was gay, but there was something about me and her and... Anyway, I went round to her house one day. I'd done so many times before. And she said... Oh, Max, say it, what? What?
You know I'm gay.
She said something about me and her, and I flew under the table. I mean, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was something that linked me to her, which meant, wait, that's me too. So I sat under the table for a good 15 minutes. I mean, I couldn't handle it. I was 21 years old. I was aware of everybody else being gay, but me? At work sometimes, I tried to pretend that nothing was happening. But it was. And it did. You're gay! He's gay! You're gay! Gay, 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 gay! You're gay! Gay! He's gay! No, do you know he's gay? He's gay! You're gay!
That's the first thing I heard upon my arrival in England. From a mountain outside of Harare to Housden, northwest London. I was not prepared for what was coming to me, as well as the soil that covered all the pavements. I soon got used to the grey building I was going to spend my time in. The school had no grounds, no swimming pool, no chapel, and certainly no priest. There was no sense of control or order. I was attached to another black boy who took an instant disliking to me. He'd already sussed me out, and that was the beginning of the nightmare.
You're gay, man.
That's all I heard from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. And I really didn't know what gay meant, so I kept denying it, and he kept saying it, and I kept denying it. I was confused. I remember this particular bully. His name was Daniel Sennett. Goofy, back teeth. He was a very clever bully. He knew how to bring me to my feet with humiliation. He used to make fun of my voice, so one time I wrote him a note to say, "Can you please stop making fun of me?" His response,
He's just written me a love letter!
everyone believed him. That changed my time at school. It got to the point where my brother was fighting people, and my brother Tanya would be like,
I'm trying my best here, Chosa, but why do you have to walk like that? Why? Why do you talk like that, man? Why?
and I never noticed that I walked differently or that I talked differently. And besides, people in Zimbabwe liked it. I guess my body was changing in ways that I didn't understand. There was a rumor about me being a girl. I remember one time looking down. Have you ever done that? Look at your own body in the hope that you find something that you'd missed all those years. Have you? I started becoming what they call androgynous.
The rose was beginning to bloom.
The toilets at school were a very difficult experience. I was always in the corner trying to hide myself. You know those guys, those white guys who really want to intimidate you the moment you get to the urinals? When you're androgynous and you're shy and you're worried about your body, I think you actually become small in stature in that situation. something inside of me shrunk. I just wanted to be in the corner, squeeze myself, because no one can see you there. But that's when they start talking to you.
What's up?
They say, while looking at you, and then you have to answer, but you're worried that if you tell, they'll are you up? So then you go, I'm fine. And then they continuously speak to you to the very end.
You see the match of the day last night? The ref was blind.
Even now, when I go out, when I go to the bathroom, I have to take a deep breath. When I'm out with my friends, I make sure that all the men on the table have gone to the bathroom, so there's no me going to the bathroom and someone says, I'll come along with you. Because you know, men do that. They do that always. I remember my sports teacher, when I was at school, used to say,
You move like an old woman!
after school, we all had to take a shower, and I remember he used to watch us.
You're gonna have a shower today.
And I remember thinking, well, it's not your fucking fault problem if I smell, is it? So fucking leave me alone. But he would watch us from start to finish. That adult casting an eye on me, burning into me, and me longing to be like everybody else. I used to walk home the same route through the park. And one day this guy waved at me. He was in his late 20s, I think. Skinny white guy with black hair. And he said,
You know me.
I was like, no, I don't. Who are you?
I see you all the time.
I was like, really? Where?
I see you all the time in the park.
Because the schools in London do not have grounds, so you have to go to the park to play football. In Zimbabwe, everything is in one place. Oh, you saw me.
I saw you in the park where you play sports. You were playing football.
I was always the goalkeeper, but not a very good one though. People used to fight to not have me in the team, which I thought was a funny thing for him to watch, you know.
Yeah, anyway, I see you around. I see you all the time.
And then a couple of days or so later, it happens again.
I saw you walking up the high street. I live quite close to Holston High Street.
And I thought that was funny, you know, that he had seen me. And then he said,
I saw you again during sports.
and then the third time, do you want to take this path? Because the park has different paths in it. And I went. I remember my heart started beating faster because I suddenly thought of my brother. I thought, where's Tanya? Because I don't want him to see me with this man. And then he touched me. And this feeling came all over me. The smell of cigarettes, the grown-up smell on him. And then he kissed me. And then I kissed him back. And then he asked for my number. And I gave it to him. And then he said,
Don't worry. I've got condoms.
I never heard from him again. That was my first kiss.
Work was good to me in the 80s. We were on tour in Canada. We got to Winnipeg really late and were told by Tracy, you know the same under the table, to go straight to bed because we had an early call in the morning. I did not take her advice. I took myself straight to the bar for a stiff drink.
So it's stiff drinks now, is it?
That's where I met Tina. She was short, bright blue eyes, blonde hair, very deep voice. Really female. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Out of town?
London.
Tequila?
Yeah.
Lift?
She said she had a boyfriend, but that didn't stop us from driving all the way to Edmonton, where we booked our hotel during my 2 days off and never left the room. Thank God for room service. that was the first time I fell in love. My first real relationship. When I got home, we talked on the phone a lot. I was so happy.
Baba Tilo, Haoni Baba Mo, Sure Baba.
And then my dad died.
Baba Tilo.
The last time I went to see him in hospital, I felt like I was walking on air. I knew something was wrong, because when I got to his room, all the blinds were down. There were doctors in front and behind me. And I said, he's dead, isn't he? I was devastated. I was so shocked. They asked me if I wanted to go in with him, but I waited for my aunties to come. All my mates were at the funeral. After he was buried, I felt like I was heading for chaos. And on top of that, my sister wanted me to send my dad's body home to Nigeria. The cost was £2,000. There was no way I was going to afford that money.
So you started drinking heavily, didn't you? Breathe. You have to tell the truth. You started this. That marvelous African theatre company, who with their backs against a wall, found freedom by telling stories about themselves instead.
Look, I can't remember what used to happen to me when I got drunk. I can't
Yes, you
it's frightening.
Yes, you
I
did.
can't.
Last night, after we left the pub, we went to this guy's house and we got plastered and you stood in the middle of the living room floor, pulled down your knickers and peed standing up. I was so angry I left. I only came back the next day to get you. I mean, sometimes you get so downright obnoxious, even to strangers. Like that time we went to that big black woman and said to her, "Why are you wearing that dress?" And the fight in the club. Of course you remember the fight.
Where you going, man? No, say sorry. Come on, fucking say sorry. Say sorry. Say sorry, you bitch. Come on. I want an apology.
What are you doing?
I said I'm... Oh, don't. No! Oh, you're gonna regret that, man! Yeah! Oh! 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 Oh, don't! Don't! Please! Oh, no, no! Stop it! Oh, oh! 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 Oh!
You're lucky I decided not to carry my knife today.
I nearly lost my life that night.
So, what I haven't said is that when I was at school, when I was 16, my breast started growing. At first, I thought it was normal. And then they just got bigger and bigger. Not really big, but sort of shapely, as if I was a young girl. I started noticing other changes as well. My skin became a different texture. I'd only ever seen skin like that on plums in a fruit bowl. I went to the doctor. I made my case. They tease me. They say that I'm gay. get bullied every day. And now these. I can't swim. I can't shower publicly, take my shirt off. I slouch.
Okay.
I don't think that I'm a girl, and I'm worried about what these mean. As a first step, at least, I need to get rid of this.
Right.
I can't go on like this. What was amazing to me was how easy it was for my doctor to refer me to a surgeon who was eager to operate rather than investigate the real reasons behind a young boy seeking to rid himself of breast. I guess for him it was routine. I will never know what it meant, what it could mean. I remember
waking up from surgery,
bandaged up in what looked like a waiting room.
but was full of people
Post-surgery,
with tags on their stretchers.
waiting to be taken to a recovery ward.
I remember the confusion
That comes from
waking up from an anesthetic, the kind of nightmares you have
the constant drowsy feelings you get.
after being discharged.
I remember going home with 2 vials of blood on either side of my chest
to drain excess blood.
from my scars. I remember not having any sensation on my chest,
Being bandaged up and waiting
for the experience to be over so I could feel
and become
normal. But I didn't feel normal. In those days of recovery, I would have nightmares from the painkillers, and I would wake up relieved and excited that I would have a normal life, just like the other boys. I remember going back to the surgeon and him being excited that he had done it in a way that meant that I still looked normal. But I didn't feel normal. I just felt disfigured, wrong. One side was much different to the other. I never really recovered from that. In a way, it hardened me. I went back to school, and everything continued as normal, except that now I felt disfigured and I had to hide the scars too.
the rose had become defiled.
Chosen, 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 chosen. Eventually, I convinced myself that I'd gotten used to it, and I concentrated on school.
No amount of booze could remove the pain of my dad's death. And to make matters worse, I'd become homeless. I ran away for 6 months to Canada to be with my girl, but I'd made no rent arrangements for my beds here. So when I came back, I had to sleep on friends' floors. Until one night, I found myself sleeping underneath a stairwell in Greenwich. It was dark,
And cold.
and I was afraid. And every time I heard a voice,
Fear turned to terror.
someone could hurt me here, I felt sick to my stomach. The worst had happened. I was alone and without a home. I realized something had to change.
Years later, as an adult, I was still struggling with my body. As far as I was concerned, I was mad. There's no way I would take the shirt off and trousers off for anyone. The trauma, the bodily changes, I wasn't a guy. Unlike other young men, my body hadn't changed, my voice hadn't changed. There was no muscle building. It became harder for people to tell whether
I was a boy or a girl.
Rejection, the audition. Rejection, an image of Tondrai in its beautiful androgynous state. There is a silent reenactment of the first encounter between man and woman. She looks at him deeply for a long period of time with curious admiration. She seems attracted by something, but is not altogether certain of what it is.
Her smile is beguiling, like a rose near full bloom. She was different. You're next, love.
My faith was withering too. I went to university to study theology, and I came out with a passion for acting. But I still felt invisible. Even in a gay bar, I didn't tick any boxes. I wasn't your bear or your cub or even a twink. I was just indefinable. A grey cloud sunk into me. I partied hard. I became reckless. The truth is, the more drugs and alcohol I took, the harder it was to forget. The thing about Coke is it takes away the glint, the sparkle in your eye, and before you know it, you've generally forgotten how to smile. I wanted to have sex and walk away. Strangers wouldn't ask questions about my body. I wanted to forget. Just the thrill of being touched. It didn't matter when, where, or how. I just wanted somebody. As long as he wanted me, I was happy for him to do whatever he wanted. It all came to a head one night after a particularly long binge on Coke and vodka in SoHo. I staggered up to the square park and I saw a few men having sex. I managed to sneak into the park by jumping the fence. I walked around. I found someone. It didn't matter that he wasn't good looking. As long as he wanted me, I was happy for him to do whatever he wanted to do. He came to me and started kissing me. Aggressively. The kind of kissing that is not for pleasure, but for dominance. As if he was disgusted by the very act of having sex with me. We started having sex, the kind you have in a park that isn't very comfortable. My phone rang, and I recognized the ringtone, and I looked in my pocket, and I still couldn't find it. I looked in every other pocket, and I still couldn't find it. And then I realized that this guy who was fucking me had stolen my phone. I asked for it back, and I continued to have sex with him. I didn't ask him why he had taken my phone. I just wanted the sex to continue because I felt that's what I needed. Someone having sex with me. From the distance, I could hear a police siren approach and people in the park making a scattering to make a getaway. I couldn't. The guy that I was with suddenly came with me. And he too made a scattering with an agility of someone used to getting away from trouble. I was too drunk, too high, and at this stage in too much physical pain from sex to make a getaway. The police car arrived, lights flashing. It was clear the policeman was pretending to avert his gaze to give me time to jump the fence to make a getaway. I couldn't. I was too drunk. I struggled to jump that fence. The policeman averted his gaze once more. I tried again. I couldn't. I got stuck on top of the fence. The lights were bright, spotlighting me. Eventually, I fell down to the ground, and I slowly, painfully, made my way back home. When I woke up the next morning, I realized something had to change.
I talked to a friend about finding help, and she directed me to a women's hostel.
Your name?
Antonia Kemi Coker.
Kame.
Kemi. Kemi.
Your age?
I'm 26 years old.
And what can I do for you?
Well, I don't have anywhere to live right now, and last night I slept on the street.
Family?
My mum and dad are dead. I've got an older sister, but she's in Nigeria.
Friends?
I've got a few friends, and I do stay with them from time to time.
And where were you staying before?
I had a bedsit, but I couldn't keep up with the rent, so I lost it.
And what do you do?
I'm an actor.
Benefits? Look, if it all works out, we might be able to offer you a place here. But there are a few rules that you need to know about.
No problem.
No drugs.
No problem.
We try to avoid fights here.
No problem.
And no men.
No problem.
When I told a friend what had happened in SoHo, particularly about not being safe, he suggested that I seek help. After a series of tests and examinations, another doctor told me that I was suffering from a condition that meant that my body was not producing enough testosterone. We embarked on a few remedies, most of which did not work. And then finally, we resorted to testosterone libido.
A replacement therapy. Injections once a month.
The downsides?
The injections are quite painful. Other side effects include increased weight, mood swings, irritability.
Upsides?
There are reports of mental agility and hair growth.
Facial?
Yes, and increased sex drive. There is one other thing you should know.
Yes.
If you stop taking the treatment, there'll be a reversal of your status. You'll probably return to how you're feeling at present.
I made my decision. This particular Friday, I came home one night, and my mom was waiting for me. She was seated at the kitchen table. She was very calm, and so was I, but a little bit distracted.
Are you okay?
Yeah, why?
I don't know. You're not talking. I ask you questions and you don't answer. What's happening?
And I was going around it, but I was tired of dismissing it. Tired of dismissing that as an element, and I was moving into, but you're my African mom, and we can't really have this conversation. But she, to her credit, was not having any of that. And she said,
so?
And then she said,
what is it? Are you gay?
And I said, yes. What I really wanted to say was, I'm sorry. I wanted to let her know that I did not wish to have failed her in this way. I was really sad. I switched into trying to support her, to soften the blow. But she was like,
yes, I'm fine. I told you I am fine.
The truth is, I could hear her heartbeat from where I was sitting, even though I was positioned opposite her at the kitchen table.
I knew. I just didn't want to say anything, just in case you didn't know. I didn't want to confuse you.
I don't know who it was that suggested,
That I see a therapist.
but it seemed like a good idea given the troubles I had seen. She had short curly hair, kind of like a bob hairdo.
She wore a female trouser suit, grey. They like to look neutral for some reason or the other.
The first thing I noticed when I walk into her room is that she sits me on a chair that has a box of tissues on the side table to the right.
And she sits facing the clock behind me on the wall.
So right away you understand that these people only have a certain amount of time.
It's kind of strange to be having my life put on a stopwatch.
And they have a repertoire of 5 or 6 questions.
Or statements they expect you to reply to. How does it make you feel? Do you think perhaps you're overthinking this?
What if I say to you there's no such thing as being normal?
Everybody's struggling with their own identity. Why is it so important for you to define yourself?
How are you feeling?
And they will never answer any of your questions with a satisfactory answer.
Always throwing the question back to you. What do you think?
And they try to take notes on the sly when you say something interesting them. Like, for instance, I might say how I was brought up, and she would write care, or let's say if I mention my partner's name, she would write
Lesbian?
So every time I go there, I dress neutral, because I don't want her to read anything.
I always try to do something fun and fabulous before I go and see her. So when I get there, I act as if I'm on TV being interviewed. And I'm always late just to prompt a question that is not in her repertoire, so I can mess with her mind before she messes with mine. But she always finds a way of getting back on that infernal track.
Are you always late?
Only when I'm coming to see you.
And how does that make you feel?
Normal.
What if I was to say to you that there is no such thing as being normal?
Before you know
She's
it.
got you blabbering about all the things that have been affecting you.
So I'm having a coffee with my friend who's telling me about the baby that he's adopting and the problem that he's having with his boyfriend. I'm really listening, I'm really paying attention. And these two men walk outside of the cafe and they shout, these two African men shout inside the cafe, "Are you a boy or are you a girl?" And I'm like, number one, you do not know me. Number two, I am a stranger in a cafe having a coffee with the mate who's having a problem. I don't need to answer you about who I am. And they start describing me, the way I'm dressed, the way I'm sitting, my scarf, my hair, my skin. And then in the end, I just give in. And I say to them, "What do you want me to be?" They didn't know what they wanted me to be, so I decided to tell them that I was a boy. And they shook their heads and walked away.
I'm sitting in this waiting room, right? I've got to sort out my housing benefit. There's about 15 or 20 people in front of me. So I know I'm going to be there for a real long time. I'm sitting there chilling, reading my book. And I notice that people are looking at me. Because what I've got on today are my jean shorts, my trainers, and my hoodie. So I'm sitting there, reading my book, just waiting. This guy calls out Miss Coca. So I get up and go to walk towards him. And this guy walks straight past me. And I'm looking at him, and everybody's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And this is the day I've been called Sonny one too many times on the tube. He's looking around for somebody that's me. So I turned to the guy and said, "Look, I'm Miss Coca, it's me, I'm Miss Coca." And he said, "Oh yes, I'm sorry, I can see it now, I'm sorry. It's like fluttering his paint. I'm Miss Coca, I'm a woman, all right? I mean, look, you're shouting out in the middle of the... Do you know how bad that looks? Look, I do this shit for a living. They pay me. I can't have people looking at me for no money. I'm Miss Coca, all right?"
Everyone is struggling with their identity. Why is it so important for you to define yourself?
Because I'm a man!
Z. It's a gender-neutral descriptive word meaning zivet. Live.
What? It was just an observation on self-definition.
Look, I don't know about this gender-neutral thing, but if Z means to live, then call me Z anytime. Because to be me is to live. To be free is to live.
It wasn't a suggestion. I was just thinking out loud. As you were saying.
So I'm in a club, right? And I see this guy I like. I'm having a good time. I have a broken arm, which in the gay world is a very good thing to have a broken arm. It makes you look dangerous, fun-loving, sporty. So I'm in a gay bar, and I'm enjoying my broken arm, and I see a guy I like. So I attempt to chat him up. He looks encouraging, so I'm like, yeah. He looks very nice. I continue on, and then he just flips at me at the end. He said, "I'm sorry, you're not my type. I'm not into girls." Go, Tony. It's your birthday. We got a party like it's your birthday.
It's my birthday. I'm out in the club with my mates. I've got on a long skirt, a ladies looking blouse. I just cut my hair, so I'm looking ladylike fine. We're all sitting there, chilling out, having drinks, having a good time. After 3 bottles of wine, I need to go to the toilet. Now this is always stress to me, stress. I mean, you know what it's like? There's always a queue. So I'm standing there in the queue. I've got my skirt on okay, but I can see people looking at me. And I'm getting closer and closer, and I'm waiting for someone to tell me anything. I get into the toilet now, and all the ladies are looking at themselves in the mirror. I'm not looking at them, I'm not focusing on them. I'm just trying to focus and do what I've got to do. Some girl comes up to me and says, "Excuse me." I say, "I'm a fucking woman," and I lift up my skirt. She says, "I know that, love, but weren't you in that show, The Big Life?"
Perhaps you are overthinking this.
face. No! Because it happens to me so often in my life. It's as big as the nose on your face.
Anger management issues.
I mean, look, right, you're a therapist, right? What if someone kept on calling you a dentist? You wouldn't like that, would you? What do you think?
So I'm in a restaurant with my mom. My mom is the most talkative person I know. She talks more than I do. She talks about everything. She talks about her business, her children, her grandchildren. She talks about me, how I'm this young man on my journey, and we're having champagne in this French restaurant, the only time I've ever managed to get her to buy champagne. And the waitress comes up to the table and says, "Ladies, what would you like for lunch?" My mother, who speaks non-stop, just stops dead. She's frozen from some kind of fear. She just doesn't say anything for 5 strong minutes. And then she says, "Well, obviously you're beautiful, darling."
How are you feeling?
Very frustrated. I mean, sometimes it makes me wonder whether it's worth trying to change anything at all.
Suicidal tendencies.
At this point, I find good use for the tissues.
She glances at the clock on the fly. I figure I've got 5 minutes left, so I shoot my best shot. I decide to tell her about my big mistake. I was helping to audition for this play, and this girl came to be seen. She had this interesting smile, but there was something about her I just couldn't figure out.
She was different.
Yes, anyway, I had this strong feeling in my gut that something was wrong. So I called the producer and asked about this person, and she said,
He's not a she, he's a he.
I really felt bad relating to someone as female when they were actually male. So I got his number and called to apologise. But I don't think my apology was taken.
I hated that audition. You know, normal auditions, if you come in alone, your gender is announced. But this was a group audition. Some kind of chat mic invention. And to top it all off, this woman mistook me for a girl.
Yeah, but you didn't have a beard.
And then she calls me up to say this also happens to her.
It does.
And I had to say to her, "Excuse me, there's a difference between someone else thinking you're a girl and you living with a girl inside of you. Those are 2 different things." So when I hear that kind of an apology, it's like,
it glanced the ear and bypassed the heart. His response made me feel like I should do something. So I met up with him and I talked to him about creating a play about mistaken gender.
little did we realize we would be doing a play about our lives.
A story I've been trying to put off for a long time. In 1995, I moved from the hostel into permanent housing. I met my current partner and I stopped using drink to escape from my problems. I also went to Nigeria to do a play and I met my sister Tola.
In 2009, I went back to Zimbabwe as an actor to do a play. I went to see my father. He was very happy to see me, but he had diminished in stature. But he said he had no regrets about how he had lived his life.
When I saw her, we hugged and there were tears. I stayed for a spell with her family. She'd long been married and is the mother of 5 children and 1 grandchild.
When I returned to London, I received news that my father had had an epileptic fit, fell into a fire, and that he died. When I was growing up, there was a story I heard time and time again.
Unlike
a story
me,
about my mother.
Tola is small.
When she was a young girl, my
soft-spoken,
mom was reading by candlelight.
and resilient.
And she got burnt. Her arm
She's
got
a
gummed to her
spoken
shoulder,
and a
it was
highly
thought that
respected
she would
leader in her
never
church.
use it again.
It was
They didn't
hard
think
to
that she would
understand,
marry,
but I
and
do
so
believe
they
in
sent
God,
her
but
to
in my
school.
own way.
At best, she would
She's very
become a
loving,
nurse or
caring,
a
and
teacher.
protective of me.
At school,
I never
she exercised her arm until it became fully
Lagos
functional.
was beautiful
She married
and
my father,
busy.
who by
I
all
found that I was
accounts
just like those
highly
around me.
sought after.
When I got back to London, I
And
walked
she
differently.
became a very
I was
successful
comfortable in
businesswoman.
my being, in my spirit.
My parents had 3
I
children.
now know that I do
Me
have family
being the
who look
last,
after me.
the
No
last
matter
good
how
thing
different
out
we
of
are,
a bad
we will
situation.
always be there for me.
I now know
I know
that my life,
tingling sensation I
like
get
my
at the
mother's,
bottom of my feet, that
is
works
full
back to the top of my head,
great
are
promise.
my ancestors, always carrying me along, always watching over me.
I guess, really being sorry means never having to say it.
And maybe real forgiveness comes from a special place where people breathe and tell stories about themselves.
Rejection. Since the commencement of the creation of Z in late 2009, underwriter undergoes monthly testosterone shots, has lost a lot of weight and now has facial hair. He uses to shave the theory that it's not growing back. For a period he assumed a male identity but embraces other possibilities. But now, his mother has returned to Zimbabwe and he still wears poison. Antonia has a female partner of almost 2 decades, with whom she is very happy. After 6 public sharings of Z, Antonia finally came out to her sister Tola and said that she loved her no less. She added that if Antonia was a practicing Christian, her sexuality would not be as it is. Testosterone deficiency is increasingly recognized as a significant health problem, adversely affecting the sexual, physical, and psychological health of aging men. After 4 years of emergency and at the ripe age of 60, Chuck Mike also sought testosterone therapy. He still holds group auditions.
Because I was missing the story of the woman, you're in the big line. So halfway through, can I make that? Oh,
Yeah, seriously.
I listen to Antonia, but that's because I know her, right? So I'm like, I want to hear the end of her story. Yeah. I'm glad that's it's quite strong.
Is that the first time you've seen it?
Second. We saw it a year ago, 18 months ago.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we got to leave. Mine. What's your clothes? Please don't have that, Mum.
Hello, good. You alright? I'm good. Okay, good. Is this the first time you've seen this? Yes. I'm sorry.